Hi everyone, it's Michelle. Welcome to my creative, vintage, artsy, eclectic workspace where I play with paper and clay and all things that are old. Today I am going to be doing a project that I am super excited about because it's like 2 years in the making. I am very, very inspired by old antique things that I can make into a version for my junk journals or for my projects or for my assemblage art. And I am a huge, huge nature and science nerd. Like, I just absolutely love natural history, like really love it. And I really love like specimens and specimen cards and taxidermed insects and all the things that those crazy Victorians were doing back in the late 1800s with terrariums and things like that. And when I was in Lambertville, this adorable little town in Pennsylvania, a couple summers ago, I went to an antique shop and I found these Victorian slides. Now these are Victorian microscope slides. And what I really loved about them was, first of all, I really loved the actual slides that I purchased were very nature, but the kind of nature I like. It wasn't all blood and gore. It was, look at this one's a grapevine. So I'm assuming this is like a sagittal cut of a grapevine. And I loved the old paper label on it. This one is the eyes of a dragonfly. How cool is that? And it has the Victorian microscope preparers each had their own little printed labels that they put on these Victorian slides. I was so enchanted by them. This is the tongue of a butterfly. And I thought this would make such an interesting part of a nature journal. And it was really reminiscent of the nature slides that I love so much. This one is a stamen of a plant, an exotic fern. I don't know if you can see that. And again, it has the preparer's name right there. I bought these they were quite pricey, but I couldn't not go home with them because they were so inspiring to me. When I got home, I did a bunch of research and I started looking up Victorian microscope slides. And what I ended up finding out was that there were a lot more of them in England and the UK than there were here, specifically in London. And they used beautiful Victorian paper. So let me show you some of these inspiring slides that I found online and tell you a little bit more about them. The Victorian time period, everything was gilded, everything was decorative. Look at the papers that are used on these microscope slides. They were so inspiring to me. And I found it really interesting how some of the windows or the areas that you looked through were such different sizes. I loved these. Reminded me a lot of the paper specimen slides that we make for our journals. I loved the labels and the writing and the colors and the subject matter. They even had these they almost look like porcelain embossed decorative slides. And I thought they were so beautiful and fascinating. So now that you've seen my inspiration, let's do a project. Let's make some faux microscope slides for our journals, for our craft projects, for our lap books, for our assemblage. And I'm going to do it 2 different ways. I'm going to do it with a kit that I've created, and I'm going to do it not with a kit because I feel like when I first started working in junk journals and doing these kind of art, I used only with the actual sources, the source material. And I really enjoyed not I actually liked using old paper, and I know a lot of you do too. So I want to make it both ways, not only because I want to show everyone that you can do things without kits, which is a strange thing for me to say since I have a kit shop, but it's true. You can make things without kits, and I want to also show you how I use my kit. So this is going to be something that I think we can do super easy. It can be super fun and creative, and this is just a jumping off point. So let's see some things that I've gathered. Let me put these away because I don't want anything to happen to them. They've survived over 125 years. Let's not today be the day that they don't. Okay, so I did a little collecting because I want to be inspired by this project. And I thought, what can I put in my slides? So I go out in the woods all year long. And even though it's winter right now, I have boxes of dried things that I have collected from nature. And I took little tiny ones, like this is a little fern, piece of fern. And this is a little bud off of I think it's Queen Anne's lace. I don't know if it's focusing. I have a little maple seed helicopter and some reindeer moss and a little hydrangea flower and a little lily of the valley flower. So those are my natural things. I also have this skeleton leaf. I don't know if you can see it, that I thought I might be able to incorporate in it. I have a stamp because how fun would it be to rip the little number out? And then I have like little tiny remnants of books, you know, like really old vintage books. This is some of the cloth that was used on a binding. I love this one because it has a word on it. I don't know if you can see this. I think it says the word number. Does it say number, I think? Very cool. I have a piece of tatting that was hand done. Now again, we're looking for little tiny things because this is a microscope slide. And then I collected an egg from like a robin that was on the ground, a shell, and I'm going to maybe use a piece of that. So that's another little dish of things I've collected. It's so much fun to gather for a project. It's I think one of the things that gets me so excited to play is to have things that I'm inspired by. So this little tray has some really yummy things. This is from a ledger I just got from the 1860s, and it has some letters on it. It was the cloth on the binding, and it just has a couple letters, and I thought that was pretty cool. And then these are all watch parts, little tiny watch gears and needles. I have a little vial that has other little needles in it. And look at this little tin that I found at a flea market. Isn't it precious? And inside, there are the tiniest little hands for the pocket watches. So I have 3 trays of really cool things. So I would say go around your craft room, your house, look around, look for things like feathers or just anything that's tiny and cool and you could make a slide out of, and put them together on some little dishes and put them aside. So let's get started. I have a laminating machine, some laminating pouches. If you don't have this machine and these kinds of pouches, you can go to like the dollar store or a office supply store and get self-laminating pouches very inexpensively. In fact, you can get pouches about this size at the dollar store for $1.25, and they're self-laminating. So you don't necessarily need this. You could also use acetate, anything that's clear. So I'm going to take, what we're trying to do is mimic a microscope slide. So what I want to do, I don't have to measure. I don't have to worry about getting anything perfect. The only thing I have to worry about is not getting a lot of residue on here and placing my items in a way they'll look like a microscope slide. So microscope slides are very, very tiny. So I am going to break off just the top of this fern. See how tiny that is? And I'm going to place this fern on the lamination sheet. It's like that. And then I'm going to take a little bit of, I'm going to take this little flower and I'm going to put that on it. And I'm using the grids of this thing behind me just to space them out. This bumpy part of the seed would not work well on the slide, so I'm going to have to rethink that one. I'm going to put the flower face down. Oops. Like that. I have another little tiny, like, it's not really a fern, it's a weed, really. But I'm going to put that down here. I actually think I need to make it a little smaller. I mean, microscope slides are super, super small. I have the little bit of reindeer moss that I'll put down right about there. And, oh, I know what I can use. These are all bits of the shell from that robin's shell that I was telling you about. I'm going to put it in my hand. Or I'm going to see if I can get the little bits in my hand of that shell. I'm going to try to gather it into a little pile. And then I'm going to see if I can place that pile on the lamination. I might need to use like a credit card or something to make a little pile with it. You could do this with some broken shells. You could do this with sand. Imagine making a bunch of microscope slides for sand from beaches that you visited. How fun would that be? Let's take this remnant piece of journal. It's just falling apart in my hand. I'm going to put that there. And I'm going to put this watch handle. Not this watch handle, this watch needle right down here in the middle. And then what I need to do is take a brush of some sort, maybe like a paintbrush, and just brush any dirt or residue away. Off. And then each lamination pouch will be fed through. Oh, shoot. I find it very important to feel for the back of it, which it's getting stuck. This is the problem. It gets stuck sometimes in there, and then you can't get it out. And that's exactly what's happening. Shoot. Okay, do you see what I did there? There is a side that's supposed to be fed through for a reason. because if you feed the wrong side through, this is what happens. And I could not show you this, never bring this up. I just literally, these are not a big deal to me, but this is sad to me that this right here got ruined and that I have this in there as well. So honestly, I'm really frustrated with myself right now. I know better. I make lamination all the time. I even thought to myself as I was putting it in, it was the wrong way, but I did it anyway. Now I'm going to show you. This side opens. This side is the side that gets fed through because it's connected. I'm going to open this side. I'm going to use these as our microscope patterns. I'm going to get another little watch hand, because I screwed up the other one. And I'm just going to put a variety of items on this lamination piece as well. The little item that said number, a little corner of a stamp, the tatting circle. You know, mistakes happen and you can't beat yourself up about them. You just have to move on and go forward. And like I said, I didn't have to show it, but I figured it was important that you guys see what happens if you feed it in wrong. Now I'm going to feed this in the right way. See, I have it. That's the key, not putting your pouch in the wrong direction. And I know that. I did it anyway because I got overconfident and thought I could make it work. And I ended up, as a result, losing a watch band and some other things. So let me be the one to make a goof up so that you don't have to. Okay, so in a perfect world, you're going to collect your items and then you're going to make a couple laminate pouches. That part should be fun and creative and fairly stress-free and not at all what you just witnessed. But that's okay. We all have our moments, and I just had one. Like I said, I can choose to not show you that moment, but then nobody's helped by that. Okay, so what else do I have on this? Okay, I have my skeleton leaf. I have a little bit of the book, right? That's kind of cool. The skeleton leaf, I think I'll just be cutting maybe a tip of it off. And maybe I'll cut a different part of it off. And I just had an idea. I wonder if I inked this black, if I could make this like an insect wing. Let's see where my black ink is. I'm going to use this card to press it onto the ink pad, and then I'm going to flip it over. And I'm going to flip it over again. Blacker. So what if I then cut something that looked like a wing? Like a insect wing. Could I pretend it was some kind of an insect wing? Let's try that. And that way no insects were killed or harmed in making the slide, but we could get the same effect. I think it kind of works. Let's try a different one. Maybe we could even say it's a fairy's wing for like a fairy's journal. And maybe you could make your own story about that fairy. I might be able to use like these blue sequins and say that they were mermaid scales, right? Put that in there and see how that looks. I have 6 more slides right here. You can see where it would be super fun to just play around with things that you could laminate and make into these faux microscope slides. But we'll just do these 2 sheets for now so that we can play around with this project. Keep in mind, this is a step you could do in advance or do one afternoon and have them in a little stash to make later. Okay, shut that off. So let me show you the kit I developed and tell you things you can do if you don't want to use something like this. So I have a whole page of just microscope labels. Some of them were from my own collection, and some I have gotten off of the internet from different public domain sites. I even have a couple like actual specimens that were in the slides. I have some really interesting slides that have paper on them. We're going to do a project with that, but we're doing one without kit first. We're showing how to do it with the laminate first. This gentleman here was part of the Microscope Association. He was a curator, so I have a picture of him, his book plate to one of his books. I loved the slide because it's a hummingbird feather. And this is what I mean when I say that there were some really decorative Victorian papers. This gentleman was one of the preparers. This is D. Bryce Scott. He was one of the microscope preparers. Here's a little ad for another preparer, a different preparer's business card. That's the front and the back. This is from, this is just a microscope book cover. This was a tool that they used to actually set the specimens, and I thought that would be really cool on a microscope. This is a business card, and then I have labels and pages from an actual microscope book from the 1800s. Some labels, some field labels, some specimen labels, a cover of the book, the first page, some field labels I found. And then I took some marbled paper and just made a template for some larger specimens, sort of based on the microscope idea, and used this Victorian slide and made little tiny the actual specimen so that they could be glued on or used. And then this is my set at different sizes along with a couple of other papers. I show you that because I think for making this project just with lamination and things we have, you could either make your own labels, or if you already have a kit that has specimen labels, or if you have stamps that make specimen labels, you can hand write specimen labels, and you can just use marbled paper. So what we want to do is we want to measure. My labels, I believe, are about, I actually cut some out, so let's see. The bigger ones are bigger than the inch, and then the smaller ones definitely will fit in a 1-inch grid. So why don't I cut these at a 1-inch grid, and what I'll do is I'll mark them using a Sharpie, and I want to have this in the middle. So I'm going to line this up at the top. I'm going to put that in the middle, and then I'm going to write a mark here, and a mark here, and a mark here, and a mark here. And then this one I'll line up in the middle, and I'll make a mark here, and here, and here and here. So basically all I'm doing is a 1-inch square in the middle, a 1-inch square on top. You could make a template for yourself. You could just wing it. You know, there's nothing that says you have to do it the dimensions. I'm doing it right here. But let's cut this out and see what happens. See how they look. And just so you know, I like to edit out some of the cutting, some of the gluing, some of the inking, because I figure not everybody needs to see basic things. So we'll just cut to the chase. Now, I have these faux microscope slides. I will cut them straight so that they actually look like the same as like a microscope slide, right? This square of a slide. And I'm going to first mimic something kind of similar to what I have and what you saw on my slides, which were just a sticker on each end. So you can get, let me see if I can put something under this so that you can see it better. You can find marbled paper in the front of books on their fly leaf, right? Just the first page that you can use. You can get some from craft supply stores. This is a digital kit that I have from my friend Sharon at Mad Paper Crush. And what you can do is you could let's use this one. You can measure your slide, make a little mark, and you can go in and just cut 2 little end pieces that you can then make your own label. Right? So you could simply take a square, fold it in half so you'll know it'll be exactly the same on the other side. And you can glue that at the top. I might make it a little bit smaller. Now, as I'm thinking about this, I'm realizing that the back is going to be white, which I wouldn't want it to be. So the way to solve that would be to simply fold it in half, glue it to itself. So fold it in half and glue it to itself so that on the other side you will see the marbled paper as well. Just like that. So what I can do is I can use glue stick, which I wouldn't want to use. I do want to ink the edges. I wouldn't want to use like Fabri-Tac or something like that because it's going to show through on the other side. But this will not show through on the other side. I'm going to ink it so that it looks a little bit more authentic. And I can just type out a little label or something using my old typewriter. I wonder how like if I can stain the edges a little bit to make it look a little bit more old, like if I can use oxides. If I put that down, you can definitely see it. And I like that effect. It makes it look older. So I think I'm going to go around the edge of this faux microscope slide like that. And look, it totally picks up on that. There's a little bit of Sharpie there where I didn't quite cut it off. So let me see if I can trim that. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, so now to make it more authentic, right? I'm wondering if I could use some of my black archival ink to even make that edge a little bit darker. And it does, it works. So that makes that little edge so a little bit stronger. I'm also wondering if I dropped just a hair. I don't know if I want to put any ink on there, but let's see what else I can do to make it interesting. I do want to put in a label there. My round punch like this. I have a couple different sizes, and I can just take some tea dye paper. I'm going to punch a couple holes just to see the colors. Just to see the sizes, I mean. And let's see what the size is on here. Oh, look, that looks cute. So what I can just do is ink the edges. And again, there's no kit here, right? It's just lamination. I guess I used Sharon's kit for the marbled paper, but like really you could use any paper. I'm just using, it's not necessary to have a kit. I'm going to take this, put that on the top and on the bottom. And I'm going to write in handwriting, because a lot of these types of things were done in people's handwriting. I'm going to write book cloth. But I'm going to kind of scratch it out. Right? I'm not going to make it perfect. And then I think I might type or put a year. I do know that this book cloth is from 1887. So I'm going to then take that same pen and I'm going to write 1887. I'm going to put a couple of distressed things on it. That might make me get a little bit better. Okay, so that's just one without a kit. Let's see what else we can make. Okay, so let's going to use this idea as well for if you don't want to have a kit. If you have pieces of ledger, there are things on the ledger that you could take off of there for your slide, like for instance, numbers and things that could look like dates. So I could take my punch and I could put it around a number so it could look like a date. Right, so this one can look like 07, and it is written in that old handwriting so that I don't have to be bothered by the fact that my handwriting isn't good enough. I could cut a square out that has great patina on it, like this one here. use that as the bottom of a slide. This is a great number that I could use for the bottom of a slide. Again, we're just having fun. We're being inspired. We're not trying to fool anybody into thinking these are actually authentic slides that go in a microscope. We are actually looking to sort of just get that feeling of an antique one. So this has a date, August 16th. It's a little bit big, like wide. So maybe I would use that actually on a specimen slide, not on a microscope slide. This here, that's 655. That's a great little number. I'm going to cut that off. You know, I know a lot of people aren't necessarily kit people, but I think kits do give you that ability to get your hands on things that maybe you can't get in the wild. But if you can get your hands on marbled paper and ledger, then you can always do it this way as well. I'm going to start making a pile of my little slides. And I'm going to put down a piece of brown paper so that we can see better. All right, let's move along to something else. Let's use this I love this like little 5. So I'm going to take a piece of marbled paper that has blue in it because there's blue in that 5. Fold what I would think would be a nice microscope width. Let's do that, just like this. And then I'm going to cut down like so. And again, I am such a sucker for like specimen size slides of all types. I have vials, which I have a video about that. And so again, we don't need it to actually go in a microscope. We're just being inspired by that. So if you have a hole punch, you can then take your hole punch and come in the center. Is that going to be too big? Do we want it to be a smaller one? Let's start with the smaller one. We can always change it after. Now let me see if I put this over the stamp, if it will fit. It does fit, but I think I would like it bigger. So I am going to go back in with, I think this is my 1 inch. I'm going to go over it. That's pretty close. I can trim it after. And then what I'm going to do is take that little blue piece of stamp. I'm going to center it inside of that slide. And again, I don't need it to be exact. I'm just trying to go in right now without a kit. Oh, I really like that. It's floating really nice right there in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some glue stick first, and I'm going to put that glue stick in so that that is right in the center. I think I have to trim this just a hair. Just like that. And then I'm going to take a little Fabri-Tac and I'm just going to put it in here. It's not going to be seen, that's why I can use the Fabri-Tac. And I'm just going to fold it over and make sure that that circle lined up. Like that. You could even put sewing in here. And so you have it on the back and the fronts. We can see the stamp, which is super cool. And maybe what would be really neat is putting a stamp on. I don't know if I want to do that. So let's look at some of those ledger pieces I had. This says 655 and it has a 5. That's pretty cool. Let's look at that punched 07 that's down here. That could be cool. This is number of certificate, which actually number of certificate could be right over the 7. It's a little long, so a specimen, a microscope slide wouldn't be that long. So I'm going to ink it, make it look a little bit more distressed. And what kind of labels would I put on it? Well, it doesn't even have to be, it could be coming off the bottom here, like this. This says Post Office Department, so I can just put a little bit of ink on that. And cut off where it says Post Office. And I'm just using my authentic papers to make or mimic a microscope slide without any kind of kit whatsoever. I think that's really cute. You have the little postage stamp. And again, I can come in with my splatter stamp and just put in a couple foxing age marks in there so it looks a little bit older. Again, nothing needed other than some paper and some things that you have to mimic a microscope slide. The stamp and the book cloth. The book cloth, see both sides, you can see the book cloth and you can see the paper. And here the paper's on the outside on both sides. And I think looks really cute. So now I'm really getting into it. So now I want to try a different kind of mount. So I'm taking a smaller hole punch and punching a bunch of holes in some black paper. And then I'm coming in with my 1-inch punch on top of it, centering the smaller holes, and I'm essentially making 4 little black frames, which are inspired by a slide I saw that had a black mount. I'm going to then take the Tim Holtz foundry wax, the foundry gold, I think, and I'm just going to paint some accents on these black frames, and then I'll go in heat gun them so that gold foundry wax just pops and makes it look like the actual mounts that I saw in some of the Victorian slides that I saw. It was a little bit tricky to not have them fly away, but they worked. And I took one of the black mounts and I just put it over a piece of moss, like you can see, and I'm just glue sticking them onto the plastic laminate. And now I'm going to put on some labels. One of the things I realized early on is glue stick is so important here because it really disappears afterwards. But if you get some on the plastic, you're going to see that. So you're going to see me come in with a baby wipe after I stick these labels on and clean them up. So it's always the same. You cut out the labels, you ink them, and then if you're going to see the back, make sure you put some distress ink on or some splatters, or use tea stain paper to print your labels off on, and then you don't have to do this step. I'm going to take my library stamp and I'm going to put today's date in some brown ink. I think that's going to give it some interesting detail on the back. I think one of the reasons I love specimen slides is because I can really just go crazy on the little details. So you saw me just cut out the slide to be the size I want it to be, and now I'm going to place those labels on it. And as you can see, I'm cleaning it up with my baby wipe. And I'm going to stick those labels right on. I can't believe how similar these look to the real slides. I'm really digging them. The last thing I'm going to do in the process is, highlight those edges with some permanent archival ink. And that's kind of the process, right? It's the same each time. It's cutting out the laminate, it's putting on the little details around the centered piece, it's inking, it's gluing, and it's so fun. And I'm finding now the juices are flowing and I just want to make all sorts of different types. I mean, I can see where this could be unlimited. Like you could just kind of go crazy. You just laminate a whole bunch of cool little specimens and, now you can, if you have a bunch of little labels, you can make every single one different. So now I'm picking out labels for this one. I'm going to be cutting some marbled paper. And again, you can use a kit, you could use your own marbled paper, you can use any kind of interesting paper with a pattern. Wallpaper would be wonderful. And I'm just doing that same process of trimming out the slide to the right size. And now I'm thinking it would be fun to just wrap the paper around the top of it. I don't know why, I just think it would look cool. And I'm going to take the label and ink it and do that same process you've seen before. Inking, putting details on the back, trimming, gluing. It's really the same. But if you have all sorts of fun little components on your desk before, when you gather, you can I could see you like just banging out a whole bunch of these in an afternoon. And today we're just kind of playing with the clear traditional microscope slide, but I'm going to start getting a little bit more involved as I play more with this idea. Well, there'll be more videos and I'll take it a step further. But today I'm just essentially using marbled paper or patterned paper, labels, and the laminated things that I made. So those are, when you limit what you're doing, when you have the steps already figured out and you limit the items you're using, and like if you have just a couple really nice pieces of patterned paper, a bunch of little labels, you can really just start perfecting it. So we're going to do one last one today. This is one where you fold the patterned paper. So this is part of my kit, and as you can see, I've just cut it out and folded it, and I'm taking my punch, my 1-inch punch, and I'm punching it out. And there's do you see the little white lip around there? That's made for a specific reason. One, I wanted it there so that I can put different color inks or gilding wax in it and really make that definition of the mount. But it's also there so that you can use a bigger punch when you do the punch for the back and they'll match up. You'll see what I mean in a minute because I forget about that step. I totally forget I'm supposed to punch the back side too so that the microscope slide is see-through. And I'll figure this out in a minute, but I'm just telling you now because it's important to see what happens. So now I'm deciding that I'm going to use these little fake wings that I made, and that looks cute. And I've decided I'm going to show you that you can also use double-sided tape to put these down. This is another very good way to mount the acetate so that it stays in one place and it's strong. I like double-sided tape, but it can be a little like wonky sometimes. But in this particular case, what I do like about this one is when you're folding over a big piece like this, it's not going to get all bubbly like with liquid glue, you know. So I'm going to trim the sides and I'm going to fold it over, and you'll see that when I fold it over, I realize I didn't punch the back. And there's nothing wrong with that. It still looks great, and it still is an effective embellishment, and it's still a nod to the microscope slide. But if the intent is for it to be see-through, you really have to punch that back piece. And here I am, I'm trimming it out, and I still haven't figured out that it's not see-through yet. And you'll see it still looks cute, so you don't have to punch the back. But now I'm realizing I didn't punch the back. No, I'm not. I'm inking. I'm still not even thinking about it. I think because a traditional specimen side in our little business, I just figured it out. And, you know, when we make a traditional slide, that back isn't there. I mean, the back is there, so I didn't pick up on it, and now I'm picking up on it. So I'm going to tear it off, and I'm just going to jump to the chase. I'm not going to put you through it, but I just cut out another piece of pattern paper, and now I'm punching the back, and it's not hard to line up, but circles can be a little wonky. That's why I thought if you had a little bit of a bigger punch, you can go over that and it'll match up on both sides. But if it doesn't, do what I just did. Just take the scissors and trim it out. And then just ink that side as well. So both sides are inked, the edges, so you don't see any white paper. And then I can put the slide, I can slip the slide right into that center piece. And it's going to look exactly how I've envisioned in my head. So let's backtrack. I have a little field label in my kit that I'm cutting out now, and I'm deciding that I think this would be really cute to be like fairy wings for a fairy journal. So I'm going to take that label over to my typewriter, and I am going to type fairy wings on it. And just so you know, no fairies were hurt in the making of this video. And when it comes back, I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to do that same process of inking and gluing it down that we've seen a bunch of times before. And now I want to put a label on the top. So I have to choose a label that I think goes well. I decided a green one would be a nice little pop of color. When you're using pattern paper of any kind, the label has to really pop. It's harder to see the label. So you have to either go very light and plain or a pop of color. At least that's what I think. So I'm going to put that green label on top. And then the last steps, right, are just inking, trimming, the same process that we've done before. And I think it is really cute. And I'm glad that I went back and punched it out because I did really want it to be see-through. So the last detail I decide to do is just take some of that foundry wax and paint it around the edges. Because it's a fairy slide, I want it to be gold and a little bit magical. The only thing I would warn is when you put a heat gun to this, you have to be very careful because you can melt that acetate. So maybe you do this step before you put the acetate in, but it is doable. It is doable to do it with the laminate in because I did get it done fine, but you just have to be super careful. And as always, I just love all the little details, so I want to put a label on the back of the slide too because I want it to be as pretty on the front as it is on the back and vice versa. And I think all those tiny little details are really what make these slides so magical. So I figure two labels is overkill. I just want this one little label. And I'm going to glue it a little crooked on the back because it's the back. And I want it, I don't know, I want it to look intentional, but I also don't want it to be straight. So I'm going to finish it off with this last little detail, and then our fairy slide will be done. So those are the steps for your basic microscope slide. I had so much fun using just basic items. that I had around my studio and just a couple pieces of patterned paper. It's so doable with or without a kit. I hope you'll try this, and I hope you'll join me for the next video where we're going to take this a step further, and I'm going to make some additional types of slides inspired by my research on this subject, and this series will all end with a really cool project. So I hope you'll join me.